Oi, boa noite. Vocês conseguem me ver, me ouvir? Oi, boa noite. Ótimo. Então, sim, ótimo. Boa noite. Me chamo Fabiano e vou mediar essa fala que nós teremos hoje aqui com o professor Tiago Pellim, que logo eu vou apresentar. Tá? A fala será em inglês, né? Eu acho que a gente já pode começar a falar inglês, né? Good evening. My name is Fabiano. As I said, I'm really happy to be here today, mediating this session of CAFÉ MULTILÍNGUE, and I'm even happier because I'm sharing this experience with a really good friend of mine, Professor Tiago Pellim. We've taken the Letras course in 2004 and been friends since then. And sorry. Okay. Recently, Tiago got his PhD in applied linguistics from Unicamp, and he's been working in different teaching contexts through the years, such as private courses and offshore oil rigs, teaching English to the workers in the middle of the ocean. And now he is a professor at Instituto Federal de São Paulo. Today, he will discuss language teaching, society, and work, thinking beyond a market-driven education. You are welcome to share your views on the topic on the chat and to make questions that will be answered by the end of the talk. Now, I'm going to invite Tiago here. Tiago, thank you very much for accepting the invitation to talk to us. Now, the space is yours.
Hi, Fabiano. Good evening, everybody. Well, I'm very happy to be here today talking to you. I thank Fabiano very much for the invitation to share a little bit of my research, my PhD research, which I have recently finished. So I think this will be a very nice opportunity to share my work and some of the ideas I have been thinking, and to hear from you, to have some feedback. And I'm also happy to do this in English. Earlier, I said to Fabiano that this is the very first time I'm going to talk about my work in English. So I'm happy to do it too. Thank you, Fabiano. Well, just for me to organize myself, how many minutes do I have before we go into the discussion section, Fabiano? I cannot listen to you.
Sorry, I think 30 to 40 minutes. Okay?
Okay, perfect. That will do. So I'll share my screen with you. Let's see if it works. Can you see my presentation? Fabiano, is it okay? Can you see it? I cannot listen to you. I don't know if you can see my.
Yes,
Yes.
that's okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you. Well, so that's the name for the talk I'm giving today: language teaching, society, and work, thinking beyond a market-driven education. As Fabiano mentioned, I'm a teacher at the Instituto Federal de São Paulo. I'm an English teacher there. And for the ones who are not familiar with this institution, it is spread all over Brazil. There are many campuses, but we are focused on technical and technological education. And the difference between those two is that technical education is what we call, it is in the high level of education, like high school, right? É a educação técnica de nível médio. While technological education is related to undergraduate courses, or what in Brazil we call superior education. Okay, that's the difference. And at the IFSP, I work with both technical and technological education, right? And this is a context in which very often we find a view of language as a tool or an instrument that can be used in a specific context to achieve predetermined goals. So this is a very common idea of language that we find in contexts as the one in which I work. So the very first thing I would like to ask you, and I'm letting this question to you so you can keep thinking about it, is how do we understand language? When I asked Fabiano about the audience for this talk, he said that we would talk mostly to letras students, right? Language students. So I think this is a question that we, as language teachers, it doesn't matter if you're a Portuguese teacher, English teacher, French teacher, right? We, as language teachers, must keep this question like in mind all the time. And if you're a letras student and you're preparing to become a teacher, you can have this question with you like from now on, okay? How do you understand language? Which conceptions of language inform our language teaching practices? And I'm asking this because I can remember a couple of years ago, Professor Luiz Paulo da Moita Lopes, during a plenary in one of CBLA's, o Congresso Brasileiro de Linguística Aplicada, he, in a very provocative way, he was talking about what he called ghost concepts, né, uns conceitos fantasma. E o que seria isso? Those are the concepts that sometimes we become so familiar with because we are all the time repeating those concepts that at some point we are so familiar with them, we stop thinking about them, okay? And I believe language is one of those concepts. We are all the time talking about language, all the time talking about discourse or literature, and sometimes we forget to stop and say, wait a minute. I'm talking about language, we're talking about language, but what do we understand by it? What do we understand about language, okay? And here I brought just some possibilities. Those are some maybe popular perspectives on language, right? Different perspectives on language. So you can, each one of you can make some reflection. How do you understand language? Maybe as a set of rules to be mastered in order to allow communication. This first one is a very popular idea of language, right? Language is a set of rules, including grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, etc. And you have to master those rules in order to achieve good communication. According to this perspective, most of the times the process of learning a language is seen as a linear one. We start from the bottom and then we go up and up like climbing a hill till we get to some point in which we achieve, I don't know, maybe fluence or native like fluency, I don't know. And even the way language courses divide their levels help us to have this idea of a linear process, right? Because we start at, I don't know, elementary or beginners level, and we get to advanced level, going through intermediate, pre-intermediate, intermediate, upper intermediate. Well, we have, you know what I'm talking about, right? This is an idea of language, very popular, by the way. Another possible idea of language, and as I said, is one that is very common in my context, in technical education context, is to see language as an instrument or a tool to be used in specific contexts with predetermined goals. That's a very popular idea too. We even have subjects like instrumental English, for example. And also very often, when we look at language as a tool, some people think that it's like a neutral tool, okay? Language will be a neutral tool which you can use to do something else, right? So that's a possible perspective on language. Another one I could mention is to see language as a way of acting in and constructing the world and ourselves. That is to say that language, that is through language that we construct the world, ourselves, our identities, and the others, right? This is another possibility to think about language. And I'm sure you can think about many others, right? What I'm saying is we always have to think on which of these perspectives inform our language teaching practices, right? When we think about English, most specifically, because we were talking about language in general. Now, thinking about English, it's easy to see that English has somehow become a commodity, right? Authors like Finardi are going to say that English is taken as a tool or a skill, né? A ideia do inglês como uma habilidade também é bastante forte. So English is taken as a tool or a skill that students have to master in order to compete in the so-called job market, right? So English is like this product of desire. You have to have it. You need it, right? Other authors like Jordan are going to say that this idea of language is spread across society and can be seen in the discourse of language schools, for example, that associate English with job opportunities and financial success, transforming it in a commodity. And earlier, I was looking for some examples, some pieces of publicity made by language schools. And I have some examples here. You can see one of them say, precisa do inglês para ganhar mais e curtir a vida? Né? Faça inglês com a gente. Então, o inglês para ganhar mais. Dê um up na sua carreira. A gente te ajuda a chegar lá. Né? Então, vai dar um up na carreira. Quem faz inglês faz mais sucesso. Invista em você. São propagandas de diferentes cursos de idiomas. I know that language schools are some kind of business. I know that, okay? I'm also aware that, yes, English nowadays is some kind of, as we usually say, basic skill. Né? A gente está cansado de dizer e de ouvir dizer que o inglês não é mais o algo a mais. Né? O inglês agora é algo básico e sem ele você não, enfim, não consegue, por exemplo, um emprego. I'm aware of that. I'm just concerned about the consequences if we take English only as this key for success. The one that is going to give you, as they say, more money or a better job, or English as some kind of investment, right? What are the consequences of this? And then we come to the point of discussing the consequences of analyzing education through the lenses of the market, through a market perspective, right? Education, including English teaching, is reduced to training, which is seen as some kind of investment aiming at future success. In this perspective, authors like Antunes and Pinto, Sibilia, are going to say that students become entrepreneurs, while teachers become coaches or instructors. We already can see this. Some schools don't call their teachers teachers. They call their teachers instructors, ou colaboradores, né? Enfim. And Arroyo is going to say that this context, all of this background, creates a crisis of identity as teachers lose their autonomy to plan and evaluate, as content is defined by the so-called market. And I can see this crisis of identity in my institution, for example. As I said, we are a technical and technological institution. We have, most of the time, a clear division between the technical areas, and the general areas. The technical areas being computer sciences or chemistry or administration and so on, while the general area is the one with all of the general subjects like English, Portuguese, history, geography, philosophy, biology, arts, physical education, right? And very often, what we see is a hierarchy as the technical area has or gains more value than the general area, right? This is very common. And I think this is related to this crisis of identity that Arroyo says. Another example that I see is that when we see, for example, teachers who want to work only with undergraduate courses. They do not want to work with high school students because, I don't know, somehow or maybe they think that undergraduate courses are more valued than high school courses, you see? So what I'm talking about is this hierarchy of knowledge. Some knowledges gain more value than other knowledges. That's something that I believe is related to this influence of the market perspective on education. And then, if English is the key to have job or to have money, at some point, it will only have value, it will only be worth studying if it gives you something back, like it gives you more money or a better job. And I think this is a little bit complicated, let's say. Well, taking this into consideration, what I discuss in my work is the need to find new epistemologies on education in general, but specifically on language teaching. In my work, I talk about language teaching in technical education, technological education. But I do believe that this is worth thinking, like for everybody who works with language teaching, or even for everybody who works with education, right? And well, there are many and many authors, many and many theories who are trying to find or to build those new epistemologies. There are many examples. Here, I put just some examples which I use as a starting point in my work. And I think if you're interested, they are worth checking. Like Boaventura de Souza Santos, who talks about this ecology of knowledge, which tries to value all kinds of knowledge and question the hierarchies between different knowledges, as I mentioned earlier, like technical knowledge, general knowledge, and stuff. Cavalcanti, who talk about an extended linguistic education, that is, linguistic education that goes beyond the idea of just working with rules, seeing language as a set of rules, and work in a critical and interdisciplinary perspective. And also Rocha and Maciel in many different works who talk about a democratic education focused on citizenship. And I must say, when we work with one of these theories, we also have to think about all of these concepts, like what am I taking as knowledge? How do I understand knowledge? Remember the ghost concepts I mentioned earlier. It's important to think about it. What do I understand as knowledge? What do I understand as a democratic education or as citizenship? We have to do that work too, okay? And in my work, trying to unfollow those new epistemologies in education, language teaching for the technical education, what I first of all notice is the importance of adopting a critical perspective, right? Which, according to Rocha and others, is a difficult concept to define, right? Because there is no one-size-fits-all definition. What does being critical mean? What does being critical involve? Again, the need to think about our concepts, you see? But what I understand as critical is that all language practices are political and ideological. So you see, I'm here saying no to that idea of the language as a neutral tool, for example. Okay? I don't like that idea. Also, it means that knowledge must be integrated to be meaningful to students. So the hierarchies between different kinds of knowledge must be questioned, and we must think in a more interdisciplinary perspective. Because, of course, the divisions we have in a curriculum, like history, philosophy, English, Portuguese, Libras, biology, that's artificial. We created that. And we have to make an effort to bring all of this together again in an interdisciplinary perspective. And also, we have to have it clear that it's not a method, but a philosophical perspective. And what I want to say with this is that I agree with Rocha, who says that a critical perspective, adopting a critical perspective, is like uma forma de pensar o mundo, o homem, a linguagem, as relações sociais em suas variadas possibilidades de organização e materialização. Não é, portanto, algo que possamos acoplar ao ensino. Né? Acho que isso é uma questão importante. Né? Então, não é aquela coisa que, bom, então agora eu vou ser crítico, em algum momento, agora eu não vou mais ser crítico. Né? Você aciona e desaciona conforme a conveniência do seu currículo ou do seu plano de curso, enfim, não é disso que a gente está falando, né? É uma filosofia que considera as lutas sociais e percebe tudo como sendo discursivamente orientado, atribuindo à educação o papel de mobilizar discursos, provocar rupturas e deslocamentos, possibilitar a construção e reconstrução de subjetividades, valores, rumo a uma sociedade mais ética e democrática, menos desigual e menos opressora. Então, essa ideia da perspectiva crítica como uma filosofia de vida, mais do que qualquer coisa, talvez implique essa ideia de que não é algo que a gente adiciona, we don't add it to the normal practice we already do. You see what I'm saying? Having a critical perspective is like having some critical glasses that we use all the time, all the way through, right? Critical perspective then is not like just discussing different or polemic topics, you know? That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is being critical all the time. Another thing that the search for new epistemologies requires from us is to better understand what we are calling as job market. And then there is something that we who work at Institutos Federais and other technical education institutions, we have a discussion, a somehow long discussion about the nature of work, how we see work, and I think this discussion can be incorporated by teachers who work in other contexts, not only with the ones who work with technical education. So we tend to make this difference between job market and labor world. Eu até fiquei tentando encontrar aqui maneiras de se traduzir isso. Não sei se isso já foi traduzido de alguma maneira, mas a distinção que a gente faz é entre uma formação para o mercado do trabalho e uma formação para o mundo do trabalho. Né? E como isso é diferente. Mais uma vez, eu acho que isso impacta qualquer um, não apenas aqueles que trabalham com educação profissional e tecnológica. Né? E o que isso significa? Né? Que virada a gente tem aqui? This means less emphasis on training for the accomplishment of tasks in favor of a bigger comprehension of society in which we live and in which the dimension of work is part of. So we have to remember that the dimension of work is not separated from the dimension of society. We're not like either teaching for society or teaching for work. What we are doing is we are teaching for society. We are working with citizens, the idea of citizenship, in which we have the work dimension. Quer dizer, a dimensão do trabalho faz parte da dimensão da vida em sociedade, não é? Não é uma dimensão separada, não estou falando de coisas separadas. So, what I'm saying is that this dichotomy that sometimes we have, are we teaching to be critical, to be a citizen, or are we teaching to be a worker? This is a fake dichotomy. It's a false dichotomy. We don't need to have it, okay? Because this worker is going to act, is going to live and work within this society, right? And in relation to language teaching, more specifically, there is a turn to recognize that we construct meanings about the world and about ourselves through language. That is, language is much more than just a set of rules or vocabulary to be mastered in order to be successful within the job market. Of course, if I work in a technical course and I know that students who leave that course are going to work in with some activities and they need some specific language aspects to do that activity, of course I need to address that. If I don't do that, I would be irresponsible. But if we reduce language teaching to only this, maybe we are reducing language too much. And then, I'm already coming to the end of my speech. One of the biggest things that we realized, me and my my advisor, Professor Claudia Hilsdorf Rocha, what became very clear to us as we developed the work was that I cannot adopt a critical perspective on education, on language teaching, and question hierarchies between different kinds of knowledge if I don't question my own idea of language. That is, in many cases, informed by what authors like Garcia, Canagaraja, and others, a monolingual orientation. So what we need to do is to question monolingualism. What is it, for the ones who are not familiar with this idea? Well, Garcia, based on Maconi and Pennycook in a work from 2009, says, our present conception of language was originally constructed by states that wanted to consolidate political power, and in so doing, established language academies, encouraged the preparation of grammars, dictionaries, and treatises to strengthen and standardize languages, and encouraged the enunciation of languages in ways that mask their differences and similarities. That is, the idea of language that we have today, like separate systems which are very different from one another and which are separate from one another, this is an idea of language that was created at some point in time. Okay? The idea that Portuguese is one thing, English is another thing, Russian is another thing, and that they are in different dimensions or places. I don't know. This is a view of language that was created at some point in time. Okay. And this monolingual orientation, when we bring it to communication, we're going to see a understanding of communication that is very common nowadays, and that informs many of those views of language that we saw earlier. Kanagaraja, in a work from 2013, says, "We believe that for communication to be efficient and successful, we should employ a common language with shared norms. These norms typically come from the native speaker's use of language. We also believe that languages have their own unique systems and should be kept free of mixing with other languages for meaningful communication." Well, raise your hand, the ones who, in an English class, for example, have already adopted that posture of English only. I do, right? Like, in this class, we speak only English, English only, no Portuguese, right? And then many people think that when we mixture English and Portuguese, this is something bad. This will lead to poor English at the end of the process, or what we used to call interlingua. Think about how we diminish what we call portunhol, right? So all of the contacts and mixtures of languages should be avoided. And we say that as if languages were like totally separate in our brains, I don't know. And is it like if we had a switch? So, okay, now I speak only English. And then I switch again, and now I speak only Portuguese, right? And when I learn a new language, my goal is to achieve some kind of fluency that is compared to the native speaker's use of the language. The native speaker is the one who can say how the language is properly spoken and properly used, right? Think about, for example, all of the things that people said about Joel Santana, the famous episode of Joel Santana some years ago during the World Cup in South Africa, when he would speak in English with journalists in English. And it's interesting because some of the comments, some of the reactions would be like, vai aprender primeiro português para depois falar o inglês, né? Ou não sabe nem falar inglês, não sabe nem falar português, a própria língua, quanto mais inglês. Né? São reações interessantes, não é? Porque elas revelam essa ideia de que a língua, to understand one language, I have to learn everything from one language first, so then I can move to another one, and then I need to learn everything about the second language so I can move to a third one. But then, when we go into reality to see the language practices in reality, what we find is that this is not how it works. That's it. It's not how it works. So what we suggest, and what I truly believe, and I discuss in my work, is that together with that critical perspective, we should adopt translanguaging lens, lentes translinguis. And this idea of translanguaging, it is inside what some authors like Blackledge and Chris call the multilingual turn, né? Essa virada que vai tentar enfatizar, não é? Emphasize the fluid aspect of communicative practices. As I said, when you go to analyze the practice, when you go into real life, you see that language does not work as different domains, as I said. Rather, language is seen as linguistic repertoire that individuals strategically access in the meaning-making process. in creative and critical ways. They will access this linguistic repertoire, and also the repertoire of other kinds of semiosis, not only linguistic, by the way, right? And the result of this is that, according to Garcia, the teaching of language will have to rely less on structures and more on providing students the affordances to engage with topics of importance. This may mean that teachers would have to let content and not simply standardized language be the driver, right? So I come to a point in my work in which I will talk about what I call letramento crítico translingue, né? Tendo em mente que esse letramento crítico, né, essa lente crítica, então, ela não me basta se eu não questiono a minha própria visão de língua como um sistema fechado de normas que precisam ser dominadas pelo falante para que ele atinja sucesso, para que ele tenha uma comunicação efetiva ou para que ele consiga se comunicar como um falante nativo, por exemplo, né? Quer dizer, não adianta criticar as hierarquias entre diferentes saberes, adotar uma perspectiva crítica sobre a formação para o trabalho, sobre a formação para o mundo, uma formação mais voltada para a cidadania, que eu mantenho o status de língua intacto, né? Sabendo que essa ideia de língua numa orientação monolíngue, né, a língua como esse sistema fechado, ela serve, sim, né, a um propósito de manutenção de um status quo. Authors like Garcia, Blackledge and Chris, Morgan and Ramanathan are going to say that this vision of language will work as a gatekeeper mechanism. E eu acho que a metáfora faz muito sentido, né? Quer dizer, é como uma barreira, um portão, né? Uma barreira mesmo. Because if only the ones who have English, and I'm not talking about any kind of English, I'm talking about fluent English or native-like English, if only those ones are going to achieve success, then we have a problem. We have a gatekeeping mechanism. It maintains the status quo, right? And this kind of literacy, esse letramento crítico do qual estou falando, requires a radical interdisciplinary perspective. I mean, can you do it within your own class, within your own subject, English class? Of course we can. But it becomes much more richer if we involve different knowledges, different perspectives in this process. Okay? Well, Fabiano, I'm going to stop now. I can see that I have already spoken for 40 minutes. So maybe now we could have some time to discuss, and I don't know if people have some comments. As I said, this is the very first time I'm sharing my research with other people. So I'm eager to have some feedback, and I want to listen from you now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Tiago. It was a really inspiring lecture. And we have some comments here. I'm gonna acknowledge first the presence of some colleagues from UFBA, Professor Lucielen, Professor Fernanda Mota, Professor Daniel, and some people from other states, Minas Gerais, Goiás, and there are some comments here. that I'm gonna share with you.
Okay.
That's a very interesting topic. Just 1 minute. A Kelly Magalhães, ela diz o seguinte, vai aparecer aí para você. Gostaria de dizer que sou professora de inglês há quase 20 anos e há uns 8 eu tenho vivido uma crise. Uma crise sobre como ensinar, o que ensinar. Acho que a apresentação de hoje esteja me ajudando a enxergar o porquê de meu incômodo nos últimos anos. O ensino de língua inglesa se tornou um acessório, requisitado, mas um acessório. Ou sempre foi um acessório? É uma questão interessante que ela coloca aqui. Né? A Flávia está falando do IFMG, né, do Cefet de IFMG, se eu não me engano. Ela diz o seguinte: muito legal essa questão de visão crítica, concordo com você. Primeiro eu vou fazer os comentários, aí depois, se você quiser comentar o final, né, você pode fazer o comentário. Parece que ultimamente o professor opta por, em algum momento, ser crítico em sala de aula, como se isso se desse através de uma determinada teoria. Ela diz que ela acredita que a formação crítica deva acontecer na teoria e na prática desde a formação inicial. Ela acha que a educação emancipadora deve ser teorizada e vivida na prática pelos futuros professores. Né? Lucas, você quer comentar agora?
Maybe you can read one more comment, and then I can comment on those comments, and then we can move on, right?
Eu acho que você pode comentar desses que eu já apresentei, depois eu apresento outros comentários.
Okay, perfect. Kelly, I understand you, and I do believe that we all, at some point in life, have had some identity crisis, right? As teachers or as English teachers. And I'm happy that this talk is helping you to understand it a little bit better. And when you say English as an accessory, this is interesting, right? Recently, we have seen many attempts to construct new curriculum for the elementary school in Brazil, high school, and also technical and technological education. And then you see, when we were discussing, the new high school model, né, a proposta lá do novo ensino médio, e no nosso caso, né, no meu caso, com o ensino técnico, eu sempre ficava com essa dúvida. Né? O inglês está sendo mantido, mas que inglês está sendo mantido? Né? Porque se a gente está tirando fora, sei lá, né, disciplinas como filosofia, artes, né, história, diminuindo todas as cargas horárias dessas disciplinas, e o inglês está ficando. Mas que inglês está ficando? Então, é esse inglês que vai só ensinar a list of technical vocabulary? É esse inglês que está ficando? Né? Que é aquela mesma lista de vocabulário técnico que os meus alunos já encontram lá no Google. Eu não preciso ensinar essa lista de vocabulário técnico, percebe? Né? Então, será que é esse inglês acessório que você, né, muito bem chama atenção? Maybe, não é? Então, é algo importante para a gente pensar. Thank you very much, Kelly. And Flávia, who works in an institution just like mine, IFMG, right? And I think you're right, Flávia. I totally agree with you. I think that many people when think about being critical, is like adding polemic discussion or discussing here and there, you know. And there is a chapter on a book. I'm trying to find it here, but I won't find it now. But anyway, there's a chapter, the one I just mentioned, by Professor Marilda Cavalcante. Aliás, peço perdão, I didn't add the references by the end of my presentation, but if any of you are interested in any of the references, you can just email me and I'll send it to you, okay, no problem. And then in one of the works I mentioned by Professor Marilda Cavalcante, she talked about an experience she had with letras students, a disciplina de estágio, né? E ela relata um episódio muito interessante de como aqueles estudantes que já tinham passado pelas discussões sobre critical literacy, multiliteracies, being critical, and then when they come to the point of preparing classes, preparing a sequence of classes, she observed how they had some difficulty to integrate critical perspective with language education, ao ponto de, em algumas aulas, né, daquela sequência didática, os alunos trazerem várias discussões e serem super críticos, né, fazerem, enfim, discussões muito interessantes e acaloradas, e aí na aula seguinte, focar na estrutura da língua ao ponto de ir destrinchando ali as irregularidades, né, a exceção da exceção, meio que esse afã de, bom, quando eu vou ensinar, sei lá, present perfect, eu tenho que ensinar tudo do present perfect, né, todas as regras, as exceções do present perfect, todos os usos. E aí, então, é que ela fala dessa necessidade de pensar em uma educação linguística ampliada, né? Que seria justamente essa que integrates critical perspective, critical discussion, and language teaching, but really integrate, like they are not two different moments that go, you know?
Yeah, thank you, Tiago. Just a correction, Flavia, my friend Flavia works at Cefet.
Okay, but it's also a technical and technological institution. Very nice.
Lucas Moreira, my colleague Lucas here, he said that undergraduates and citizens from other professional areas who consume English as a social status tool must watch this lecture. Yes, I agree. There is a question. Daniel Vasconcelos, also my colleague here, he said, great lecture. Do you think letramento crítico translingue is enough to guide teachers to move beyond the market-driven education model? What else does need to change in teachers' education? Você quer responder essa pergunta e depois eu faço a da, tem outra aqui da Fernanda.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Lucas, very much. And well, I think that maybe we should start within our classes, right? Because when I say that, and when I say that we need what I call letramento crítico translingue, né, porque eu entendo que o letramento crítico não me bastava, é por entender que muitas vezes na minha própria sala de aula, né, eu não questionava esse ideal linguístico ou essa visão de língua, não é? Então talvez a gente possa começar. We should start within our own classes with our students and try to question this native speaker ideal, which is so strong, and we see so many students come to our classes saying that they want to speak American English or British English, and what does that mean, right? So I agree with you, Lucas, and maybe I think we should start within our own classes. And Danielle Vasconcelos, thank you very much, Danielle. And I must say that I'm not sure, right? Quando a gente pensa na educação, né, e na força, né, que o mercado, né, essa perspectiva de mercado traz para a educação, e a gente está falando de não só do ensino de línguas, mas da educação como um todo, né, enfim, isso já atingiu um ponto, né, em que chega a ser difícil pensar em como a gente sai disso, né? Imagino que seja mais ou menos por aí que você esteja pensando. Quer dizer, como que a gente abandona, então, ou consegue refutar, né, toda essa perspectiva de mercado e tudo que ela traz a reboque na educação, sendo que ela já tá tão grande, né, e já está aí, né, está instaurada, né? Receio que talvez cresça, né? Quando a gente vê também as iniciativas para privatizar ainda mais a educação, né? Então, como a gente foge disso? Então, dado o tamanho do problema, né? Nem me atreveria a dizer que o que eu estou chamando aqui de letramento crítico translingue is enough, né? Maybe it's a start, but as language teachers, maybe, and that's what I want to say, is that maybe we should start with what is most basic to us, that is, language. E que é justamente o que muitas vezes a gente, como eu disse no início, passa despercebido, não é? Quer dizer, como a gente entende língua, né? Justamente por ser tão comum, né? Language is our object of study, is our object of work, is our object of teaching, is our object of analysis, que a gente acaba deixando levar, né? E não percebe quando esses conceitos vão sendo capturados, né? Então, acho que talvez seja um começo, mas com certeza não deve ser suficiente.
Thank you, Tiago. Natasha said, great lecture, Tiago. And Fernanda Mota, my colleague here, she said, congratulations on your lecture. And she made a comment and a question. She said, dichotomies set apart factors in life that are completely interwoven. We shouldn't focus on jobs to the detriment of life, because work is just a part of life. Work is not life itself, as neoliberal capitalist-driven principles suggest. What's the students' response to classes in which critical thinking is a key point?
Okay, thank you very much, Fernanda. And again, I agree with you. I'm not sure if I understand the question when you say what's the student's response to classes in which critical thinking is a key point. I'm not sure if you're talking about my students or the students.
Yes, maybe your experience.
Okay. For the doctorate research, I developed a research in one of my groups. It was a group that studied chemistry integrated to high school, né? Então, é um curso integrado no qual eles fazem química, né, o curso técnico em química e o ensino médio, né, de forma integrada. Ou pelo menos deveria ser de forma integrada, né? Porque a gente, de alguma forma, tem aquela divisão, né? Área técnica, área geral, né, que eu mencionei. Enfim. And then we developed a project, de alguma forma tentando também, né? É interessante que você mencionou isso, de como, né? o trabalho é uma parte da vida, né? Então, a gente tentou ampliar isso para pensar em projetos de vida, né? Esse foi o tema geral que nós demos para o projeto que foi desenvolvido durante um semestre com os alunos. And what I thought, the response I got was that it helped students to start questioning many of the dichotomies that you mentioned, right? Então, uma coisa que era muito marcante ali naquele grupo, por exemplo, era uma visão de química como um conjunto de conhecimento técnico ou teórico, distante da realidade, não é? Aquele conhecimento muito específico que estava restrito ao laboratório de química, por exemplo. Não é? E aí, um dos pontos importantes do projeto foi justamente chamar atenção para, hey, is it language just this body of knowledge that is restricted to the laboratory, or is chemistry all around us? Or how is chemistry present in our everyday lives, as we are talking right now, or as I am drinking some coffee, or as I am eating, as I am exercising. Então, assim a gente começou a questionar, né, essa hierarquia entre saberes. And I must confess, although I am arguing in favor of this translingual critical literacy practice, questionar, to question the ideal of language was maybe harder than questioning assumptions about chemistry, about knowledge, about work, about success, you see? O que me faz pensar mais uma vez na pergunta do Daniel, né? O quanto essa ideia, né, de uma língua, né, que te leva a um sucesso e que está informada por essa perspectiva neoliberal capitalista que a Fernanda menciona também, ela é tão forte que, para mim, por exemplo, foi a mais difícil de ser questionada. Né? And I wouldn't say that we could question it 100%, but maybe we started. Well, being critical then also requires us being like humble in the sense that we're not achieving, like we're not deconstructing everything, right? It's I start.
Yes. Thank you, Fernanda said. Thank you for the example.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Any more questions? So I think we don't have more comments or questions. We can finish here. Tiago, o Daniel Setia, obrigado, Tiago. O tema da sua apresentação é importantíssimo e seus insights são necessários para caminharmos em direção a um novo e melhor modelo de ensino. Concordo plenamente. A Fernanda disse que vai usar essa live nas aulas dela. Parabéns. Faço coro aos elogios dos colegas aqui. Uma fala maravilhosa e uma pesquisa maravilhosa, que se originou do seu doutorado, correto? E você, logo a sua tese vai estar disponível para quem quiser fazer a leitura, né? Uma leitura mais extensa sobre o assunto. Muito obrigado, Tiago, por aceitar participar dessa live aqui, compartilhar esse momento com a gente. E obrigado ao pessoal que ficou com a gente até agora. Né? Na semana que vem, nós vamos ter uma outra live, dessa vez com a professora Thalita, da Universidade Federal do Espírito Santo, que ela vai falar sobre emoções nesse tempo de ensino remoto. Ela vai questionar se existe espaço para as emoções nesse modelo de ensino remoto que a gente está vivenciando agora. Então, não percam a live da Thalita semana que vem. E muito obrigado. Acho que a gente pode finalizar por aqui. Muito obrigado.
Fabiano, só antes de finalizar, queria te agradecer mais uma vez pela oportunidade. Foi um prazer estar com vocês, discutir um pouco das ideias, não é, que eu tenho tido. Obrigado a todo mundo também que participou, assistindo e mandando os comentários, as perguntas. E, mais uma vez, para quem tenha se interessado, queira algumas das referências que eu tenho usado, ou mesmo, como você disse, depois ler a tese, em breve ela vai estar disponível. Vocês podem me enviar um e-mail e depois eu posso compartilhar com vocês.
Você pode compartilhar o seu e-mail, Tiago?
Posso sim, perfeito. Tiago Pellim, né, tudo junto, com 2 L's, M no final, Tiago Pellim, @ifsp.edu.br.
Eu coloquei aqui no chat.
Perfeito.
Aí vocês podem mandar e-mail para o Tiago pedindo a cópia da tese dele, que ele está finalizando agora para entregar a versão final, e logo vai estar disponível. Né?
A gente continua o papo por lá.
Isso.
Muito obrigado, Fabiano. Obrigado para todo mundo.
Obrigado, pessoal. Tchau, tchau.